Making money as an entrepreneur is not easy. And if you don't mind your numbers, if you don't pay attention to the details, at least occasionally, you're going to be in trouble. Today's interview is with a new friend of mine, Jason Richelson. Now he's kind of in the automation space related to e-commerce, even related to accounting. But I think what's fascinating about Jason's story is how he has started multiple businesses, had some fail. They didn't work out that well, had a great exit with one of his businesses, and is now building better analytics tools for e-commerce accountants like myself and maybe brand owners like you. What does it look like to understand where my money is going? And even as a CEO, maybe a CEO that has a CFO, maybe like myself, or perhaps you have an accounting firm, you have a controller, should I be spending a little bit of my energy making sure that I know where my cash is coming from and going to? The answer, of course, is yes. I think you're going to find Jason to be refreshing. We're going to hear about his journey and some of the things that have made him wildly successful over the last 25 years as an entrepreneur. Without further ado, let's dive into today's episode of Return on Podcast with Jason Richelson of Bookkeep. It's time to maximize profitability and cash flow. It's time to learn habits and hacks from the best e-com CEOs. It's time for Return on Podcast with me, Tyler Jefcoat. All right, welcome to today's episode, Return on Podcast. I have my new friend, Jason Richelson from Bookkeep.com. Jason, how are you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing great. Glad to be here.
Awesome, man. I'm glad to have you. So, this summer we continue to have this discussion on the podcast on how do you improve the financial performance of your e-commerce brand? How do we make better investment choices? And so we're going to get into that nitty gritty. Jason, you've got so much experience as a kind of practitioner of the bookkeeping world. But before we dive into that, I'd love to get a little bit of your story. Give me your journey, man. What went wrong in your world where you decided to let me go start a business?
Well, yeah, I mean, it was basically, almost getting fired at PricewaterhouseCoopers is basically where I started my first business. I quit to start my first business before they could fire me. But I started PricewaterhouseCoopers. I learned how to write software for accounting teams and quit, 99 and started a tech firm that did payments. That didn't go well. So I ended up on a trading desk doing reconciliation and trading essentially, but mostly reconciliation of the trading desk's trades. And that led me to not being happy doing that work for 12 hours a day. And I started a retail store. So I started a wine store, a grocery store, another wine store, and again, got frustrated with my numbers. Again, it always comes back to numbers and reconciliation of data because everything I've always done has been mostly to watch the numbers grow and stay on top of making sure that I know what's going on. And I didn't like my point of sale system, and I didn't like that I couldn't access it from outside my store. So I started Shopkeep, which was a cloud-based. We were the first cloud-based POS on iPads. There were a few before that. Shopkeep, kind of got overtaken by Square. Obviously, Square is huge, but Shopkeep did have a very good exit, sold to Lightspeed. And after that, I actually started a business that failed, another wine business. And I realized I just need to do something simple. And I started doing the books for the one wine store I still had. And I automated all of it. And I realized that this is all automatable stuff. And most people don't know how to do that. And that's where Bookkeep got started. We actually started as an accounting firm. And I needed it more. I needed clients so I could learn what needed to be automated, what tools should we use from other people. And Bookkeep started as an accounting firm, and we are no longer an accounting firm. Now we just do revenue and sales tax accounting for e-commerce businesses. And so, going from having that type of business to being a bookkeeper, accountant for that type of business to now really operating an automation platform and building it. That's how we got here. And everything I've done in the past, I think, has led up to this.
Beautiful. I love, by the way, I love your journey of, I started a business, maybe the first venture didn't go so well. And then obviously the payment gateway business ended up having a nice exit. That was a success story. In spite of the fact that Square became the, million-pound gorilla in that industry, you still had a successful exit. And then, hey guys, you can have a successful exit and still have a failed venture afterwards, right? And so you've tried some things. What do you think, maybe my question is this: when do you think you realize that you're like an entrepreneur? Like, is this kind of, I never played nice with other people and I really wanted to build my own thing, or was this literally Price Waterhouse was going to can you and you're like, yeah, I'm not going to get my ass fired. I'm going to go build something.
No, I mean, they were going to can me because I did not fit in that I could
Right.
not do my weekly check-ins. I just wasn't that type of person. No, it's funny when people talk about, taking entrepreneurial classes at college. Like, I don't even understand that. I mean, I just am driven to build things and watch them grow and build, I love to build stuff. I mean, my product team is probably really upset with me all the time because I just want to do so much in the product and I have to literally bite my tongue to just because they can only do so much. So no, I love building stuff. And I just, when I see opportunities, I like to solve those problems. It's all about solving problems, but then trying to solve problems for other people.
So I'm going to get into accounting a little bit here in a second, but just one more question on the entrepreneurial front. So you and I have both exited businesses. I was meeting with some friends of mine. I'll tell this story real quickly. I was in Omaha. I did my Berkshire Hathaway pilgrimage
I was
last.
there this year, my 21st year. I go every year for 21 years now.
Jason, I didn't know this. So I had never done this. I just knew my boy's 93 years old. I don't know how many more years we get him. We're going. And so me and three other friends of mine that we've all had exits of companies. We're like, you know what? One of us owns a couple of shares. Let's go. Let's get some badges and go check it out. And the thing that was interesting about the discussion amongst the 4 or 5 of us that were there together was this idea of, okay, you've kind of climbed a mountain, you've exited a business, and now you're in this mindset of how do I find my second mountain? Am I anxious about being able to find it or not? I'm just curious for you, how did you approach that after your first exit where you're like, did you go through am I ever going to do anything valuable again? What do I do with my life? I mean, was that a thing for you or was it pretty straightforward to go to the next deal?
No, I went through a huge depression. When I wasn't running that business anymore, I didn't know what to do anymore. And I started another business so that I could start building another business. But it turned out I was just pouring money into something that wasn't going to work because I thought I was so damn smart. And I wasn't. And at least that situation, I was not smart. And I still ask myself, I know I'm in the right space now. There's a huge opportunity in the accounting space, but it's hard to find the right space. It certainly is hard. I mean, if you look at what Buffett does, and we don't have enough time on this podcast to talk about it, but he just continues to invest in businesses and bring them on and let them grow. And there's no ending any businesses there. They just keep continuing to grow. That's a really hard thing to do, but you got to have the right structure set up to do that. But it's hard when you exit. I actually think about it here. I love what I'm doing here. I mean, no one's coming to buy us. Yeah, we're still small, but I have no interest in selling this business. I want to grow this business. There's a huge opportunity in accounting.
Beautiful. Yeah, I went through the same thing, by the way. I remember some of the most depressing moments of my life being right as diligence was ending, right as the contract got signed. And I thought I would feel this huge relief of like, okay, these 120 souls aren't dependent on me anymore for their income. Thank you, Jesus. I'm doing something else. I'm going elsewhere. And it took me like a week to be like, oops, what's my purpose? Yeah. So I get you now. So I appreciate you answering that question.
You have to prepare that that's going to happen. And maybe you need to change your context, buy a boat and go for a year or something. I don't know. But again, I mean, I just love building things. And I'm so happy that I've taught myself how to code in the last couple of years. And I just love you got to always be doing stuff or else I don't know what happens. I mean, Buffett and Munger, they do not stop thinking. They don't. I mean, obviously Munger has, unfortunately, but they just keep thinking and using their brain. And that is why they've stayed, so smart for so long.
Yeah, so let's talk about the craft that you and I are. Guys, listen, once you're an accountant, you're always an accountant. You can't shake it. It's kind of like an alcoholic or something. We're stuck here, Jason and I. Jason, if you were advising let's call it a $5 million brand owner out there, we're trying to build our brand, we're trying to build the empire, and we've got to a point where we need to do something different with our numbers. We're having a hard time seeing things the way we want to see them. Like, what advice would you give a retailer that's trying to up their level from an accounting standpoint?
Well, I do this and listen, I've been studying Buffett and Munger for 20 years. And so from them, accounting is the language of business, right? So, and I know you probably have a lot of clients, and I'm not an accounting firm, but I see this all the time. You get founders who are like, I don't need to know about accounting. I have somebody else who does that. That is wrong. It's not that hard to understand accounting. The simple things, what a balance sheet is, what, your income statement, you have to understand your statements, and you have to want to get accurate statements every month, because in the end, you can have any reporting system, connected to Shopify, whatever you want, all over the place. In the end, your most important metrics are those statements that come out of your accounting platform. And you need to be able to understand those, and you need to be able to say, hey, accountant, or whoever's doing my books, I need those statements within a couple of days after the end of the close of the month. I want to know how we're doing, because your team is going to tell you all kinds of things. You're going to have all kinds of metrics that are going to show huge sales. I mean, we can get into the details about how Shopify will show income and there was no payments against those income, and you need to have that all reconciled into your books to your bank accounts, so you actually know what's right and what's not, so you know where there's problems. And I have always done my own books in all my businesses. So I've always understood accounting better than other parts of stuff. So that's why I am where I am. But I think it's really important for business owners to realize that you do need to understand a little bit of accounting. It's not that scary. And, just look at those statements every month. First thing, just ask to get your statements every month, your income statement, your balance sheet, your cash flow, and then ask your accountant, can you please explain these to me for 30 minutes every month? Right. And that'll be the beginning of learning it and understanding what you need to know. And why are these numbers growing? Look at them on a month-to-month basis next to each other. Yep. I think a lot of people are just afraid of that. And I think it's super important to grow your business. Unless, of course, you know really well how to sell. If you have the most amazing product and you can sell, those businesses, I've seen some of their books are not good, but they just continue to churn out money. I don't know how to do that stuff, but but eventually they get in trouble because somebody steals from them, or some mistake happened and they lost money, because no one's reconciling what's happening. So it's important to get your head around the numbers.
I was actually, it's funny, Jason, I was listening to a podcast yesterday, doing dishes or whatever around the house here. And the guy was talking about these college athletes getting NIL money now. So that was something I found interesting. I was listening to it. And the guy made the comment that whenever you talk to a 20-year-old or an 18-year-old that's getting money for the first time, they're always really, really smart in their own eyes, but have no idea how to handle money, right? And they get really overwhelmed, and the percentages of bankruptcies, even amongst the multi-million-dollar earners in the NBA or maybe in the NFL, is really high. But what's interesting is you go to the average NFL player about a decade into their career, and what you find is that they all talk exactly like CPAs. They understand the nuances of how to manage money, probably because they took some skint knees along the way. And my point is just to buffer your point there. That doesn't matter how lucrative your product is that you're selling, whether you're SaaS or an NFL player that makes $20 million a year. If you don't understand how to manage money, someone will take it from you, or you will ignore signals that you're losing it. And this is where I got to be honest, I got in trouble a little bit with my first company. We went from 5 to 58 employees in the year 2014. It was an insane year. I had no idea how to manage this company. And I'm an accountant, for crying out loud. And we, had a couple months where I'm like, oh gosh, am I going to run out of cash? Am I going to crash this business? But my optimism, Jason, as a founder, I was like, well, it's probably just noise in the numbers. We'll be fine. It's going to be good in a month or two. And friends, I just want to tell you, if you're ever tempted to say that, it's not going to be okay. You got to actually look under the hood, understand where your money's going. And if you have good accounting, it should tell you troubling news a few times a year. If your accounting always tells you what you want to hear, you've got the wrong accounting. It needs to give you input that actually changes the decisions you make as an operator. And if it isn't, what are we doing here? And so I just want to agree with you there. I think understanding basic accounting doesn't matter if you're paying for apps, doesn't matter if you're paying an accounting firm. You've got to know how to kind of run your balance sheet and your P&L, basics of a cash flow statement, so that you can hold your teams, your product lines, your vendors, your employees accountable.
There's depending on how many layers it goes through before it gets to you, the numbers that you might see on reports your team gives you has to be reconciled to your statements. And that's the control function that really the CFO and the controller together should be doing, or the CEO and the CFO/controller should be doing.
I agree with you. Anything else that you've learned when it comes to I don't know if it's like evaluating your accounting or steps. Here's the reality, Jason. Like we talk a lot about accounting and e-commerce on this show. So I just want to kind of let you take this where you want to take it. Like, what do you think would be the most helpful for your $1 to $10 million brand that's maybe they got a dream to exit in 2026. They're trying to get things right now. Like, are there some blocking and tackling or some ROI heavy decisions that you feel like these guys should be leaning into now when the interest rates are garbage and it's difficult to sell?
Well, it's along the same lines, but one of the things we do see is getting the automation in place early, even if you don't need it. So for instance, and I'm going to talk my book here, but our system Bookkeep actually can do accrual accounting for your e-commerce business, which if you're doing $1 million, not that important to actually book the revenue when it was shipped. As you grow, it becomes more important, and it also becomes harder to implement later. Better to implement it earlier. And another big important thing, again, because we're kind of like a compliance, not technically a compliance tool, but that's what we're trying to make sure you don't make mistakes, is get the sales tax set up right ahead of time, and also make sure you're paying it right, because that can bite you when you try to sell. No matter what kind of business you're dealing with, those are always, the audit things that happen when you're trying to sell your business. And those are things that you really should get on top of early and get it automated early, because that will help get those numbers and those books done quickly at the end of the month.
And Jason, I'll make sure that bookkeep.com, we'll have all the links in the show notes. People can find the tool and check it out. But just for those people who aren't familiar with Bookkeep, what are the problems that Bookkeep is actually solving? Like, is it taking Amazon data and Shopify data and helping you just put those into your accounting system in the right months? Is it also managing? I'm trying to figure out if you guys are an alternative to other apps that connect to marketplaces, or if you're an alternative to, say, like a sales tax app, or both. Are you guys actually doing sales tax payments as well?
Yeah, we're doing the payments as well. So what we do at Bookkeep is very different than all the apps out there. There's 50 apps that'll sync orders and transactions to QuickBooks.
Okay.
There's probably 100 of them. We actually pull all the orders every single day from all e-commerce platforms: Amazon Seller, PayPal, Walmart, obviously Shopify we're huge on. We also have PayPal. We have a bunch of cannabis POSs. We pull all your orders. We create proper sales summary entries on each day, whether it's based on when it was paid for or based on when it was shipped. So we do accrual summary entries, and we do it by platform, not by payment method. You don't book your revenue by PayPal or Shopify or Amazon. You book your revenue by shoes, socks, clothes, whatever, clothing. And then we also then grab those payouts and make sure all those fees are booked accurately. Obviously on Amazon, there's a huge amount of fees. We not itemize, but we basically give you a line that summarizes each day of fees so that you can book those as granularly as possible. Shopify hides a huge amount of stuff in that adjustment line. They don't even have reporting on it. We pull all of that out, whether it's sales tax that was withheld that we paid on Facebook Meta, or it's a coupon that Facebook Meta provided that shows up in your manual payments, but actually comes into that manual adjustment, into that adjustment line on your payout. We give you the ability to book all of those fees accurately, because your accountant and the accounting team just cannot keep up with all the changes. Shopify just added a way to pay influencers that now we're going to soon be rolling out. That'll be in our journal entries, so that you can properly book that. There's also shop cash promotions that they've just started taking out of that line. So we're really the team member that when I go and talk about what we do, it's not an app. It's a service that we provide through the app. We are your revenue accounting team member. We're going to help you book all the revenue accurately. And then we're going to take that same data, and if you opt in, we will work with Avalara. We work with Avalara Managed Returns, and we'll send that data to Avalara so that all your sales tax will be filed throughout whatever state you're filing it. So, and that, by the way, even if you use Avalara Managed Returns internally, ask that team member, would you be happy to give this up? Because it's really, really hard to use sometimes. We automate that data through into Avalara. We have a direct line into Avalara if there's any questions. A lot of people have a lot of trouble using their platform internally, because also it's something you only do once a month. And so when you do it once a month, it's like, how did this work? I can't remember. This is so frustrating. So we basically automate that whole workflow. So we're revenue and financials automation is what I call it, for e-commerce.
And so you guys are doing journal entries. So this is the accounting nerd side for a second. You guys are pushing entries into I'm assuming QBO and Zero. Are there any other accounting softwares you guys push into?
Yeah, QBO, Zero, Sage Intact, and Zoho Books right now.
Love it. And then you're very specifically on the revenue side of it, not doing cost of goods sold or inventory at this point, right?
We do cost of goods sold for Shopify and soon for Amazon, where we have our own cost database. However, we don't do any inventory. We're very summary based. We're basically very financials based. You have a front office where you would do your inventory management. We don't do anything with inventory. We only do the financial data.
No, that makes sense. That's really valuable. Thank you. That's Jason. This does sound like a really clear tool. I think what I like about tools like this, and the reason Jason I like yours is it is so easy with complex data sets. Like for instance, you had a 3PL with Amazon's fulfillment network, and you may have inventory sitting in 75 different fulfillment centers across the country. I don't want that data pushing automatically into QuickBooks Online anyway. Like when it comes to that kind of inventory management, I really need to have an inventory czar within my company that's really managing that complexity. And so it actually is a relief to me that you guys aren't doing that yet. Although it sounds like you can upload a flat file of, cost of goods sold per unit and actually generate a cost of goods sold entry. Probably, is that how you're doing it?
Yeah. We generate. We have cost of goods sold templates that will be based off of our own cost database that you would upload into, or whatever's in Shopify for the costs. Yeah.
Lovely. That's great. Yeah. Well, and so again, guys, that last 5 minutes was probably a lot of accountant nerd for those of you guys out there like, why the hell am I listening to this podcast? Here's the reality. And I know, Jason, you can speak to this also, but when Seller Accountant, we helped, it was over 100 million. I don't know the exact amount, but a gigantic pile of our clients were able to exit and make life-changing money a few years ago when the market was really hot. And the ones that did not get through due diligence all had bad books. And so, thankfully they had maybe brought Seller Accountant on, or they had a tool like bookkeep.com that their accounting team could use to make sure that when a private equity level group is getting involved, and I'll be honest with you, it's like legacy accounting firms, especially the big boys like a Price Waterhouse, are terrible at auditing e-commerce financials because they don't understand the data. And so you and I need to have our books be so investor grade, so above reproach, that they look at it and say, oh, nothing to see here, let's move on, because they don't know how to handle the data, and you don't want them trying to reconstruct your financials for you.
Yep, absolutely right. And just following on that point, the people who have to get your books done every month can't trace all the data. I mean, it's just really getting really complicated, because also the platforms move so fast. When you've got TikTok now available, they're moving so fast because everyone wants to sell faster, sell better. But it's always the accountants that are last to know. Wait, you've been selling on TikTok? How long? Where is that money going? Is there a new bank account that I don't know about? Like we're actually building tools where we can notice these triggers and be like, we're not seeing the deposits from TikTok. Granted, it's separate. It usually comes through Shopify, I think, in some of those. But so that we can identify those issues and bring them your attention right away so that you know what's going on.
Love it. Yeah, because you kind of alluded to two errors that are often happening with these kinds of books. One is you just book a deposit when it comes in and you're truly on a cash basis and you're not grabbing your coupons or your fees. You're probably ignoring sales tax. That's the wrong way to do accounting. And then there's the partial right way where you're trying to book your receivables. You're saying, hey, PayPal still owed me $20K at the end of last month. But because you don't have a mechanism for discovering whether or not that channel actually paid you, you just see that account balance on your balance sheet grow and grow and grow. And so what Jason's describing there is you need to have a mechanism for making sure that if Amazon owes you money, they actually paid you. And frankly, Amazon's probably going to at this point. They don't make many errors. I would say this: I've seen some PayPal screw ups, Affirm screw ups, Sezzle, some of these other, and now all of a sudden you integrate TikTok, where you may literally have one Shopify account that's handling money from multiple sales channels.
Oh yeah.
Got to have your handle on that.
Our customers have multiple Shopify accounts with one PayPal account across all three. We also handle PayPal. So we connect to PayPal, we pull all the numbers, and then we reconcile them against your Shopify store. So we don't double enter any of those numbers. And so when you're using Bookkeep, your balances are accurate. Your balances across all of your payment, all your sales channels, essentially your payment methods, are going to be accurate to the day. So even if you're using Amazon, we keep your balance in Amazon up to date every day, including your reserve account. So when you look in your books, you'll know exactly what what you're holding in balances across all your other channels. And that's really, really important, because also these platforms are trying to become banks. We just had a customer last week. We were just drilling in. They're like, we stopped getting our deposits. What's going on? And so, and that's why we're here. Chat with us. We don't see our deposits. Can you help? Why are we not seeing deposits? Turns out they accidentally turned on the Shopify balance, which is a new Shopify bank account, and all their money started going there, but they didn't realize they did it. Or maybe the owner did it. I'm not totally sure the story, but somebody did it and they stopped getting their deposits. So then you've got money being held somewhere else that needs to be on your balance sheet. And you need also know where it is so you can bring it back to your checking. But it is, and Square's doing the same thing. As soon as you enable a Square debit card, you no longer get deposits from Square. It stays in the Square account. You have to send the money over manually. So a lot of these platforms are trying to become bank accounts and as an accountant, if you're paying for bills out of your balances, which, PayPal is one where people do that, and it's really a nightmare for accountants. Yes. Now Shopify and Square are trying to do the same thing, where you can do your bill pay out of your balance before it hits your bank account. It's a nightmare for accountants. We're trying to get on top of that, but unfortunately we don't have APIs yet available for us to automate it, but we will when it happens.
Wow, that's beautiful. Well, Jason, this has been a good conversation as we kind of look to land the ship here with this short episode. Actually, just to kind of I just want to ask you a fun question real quick. Like, what is it that you do when you're not creating and building companies? Like, do you have a hobby? Like, what is it that you get into that kind of gives you life and joy?
Well, unfortunately, it is building. I love coding things and figuring out how to integrate systems. And yes, for the last year, that is basically all I've been doing. But no, I like to travel. Actually, this summer, I'm going to work remotely in Europe for a couple months, and we're going to travel around and hike. I'll work probably 4 days a week and then take 3 days off. Obviously everyone can work remotely. And so I'm looking forward to doing some hiking and just being in a different place and traveling, which is what's great about accounting is is you really can do it from anywhere.
Yeah. It's funny. My hobbies kind of evolve as my kids' ages have changed, and as my amount of time, like right now, confession here, I'm a nerd. We're accountants. We can be safe here. And so like when the pandemic hit, I really got into chess. I never played as a kid. And man, I'm competitive to a fault, probably like you are, Jason. And I love math. And so find me something that gives me those two things, whether it's like poker or chess or give me a strategy game that I can prove that I can work harder than you and win at. And I'm all about it. I do still love to hike. My sister and her husband lived in Salzburg, Austria for a few years. So if you guys get a chance to do Austria, do the Alps, beautiful. We did Greece last year as well. Like I agree, guys, the internet is everywhere. Actually, it's funny, Jason, almost everyone who would listen to this podcast can be digitally native. And so, taking advantage of those circumstances.
The trick is just like, I'm purposely, the reason I said that is otherwise I will work all the time. So I'm actually telling myself Monday through Thursday is my work days, so that I mentally for myself can be like, I'm just not going to work these 3 days, while we travel, so that I can try and turn off.
So final question I have for you, and then we'll wrap up. I just asked this to everybody. I'm just curious if there's a habit or a hack or a rhythm in your life, Jason, that gives you an unusual kind of return on investment. Anything come to mind, whether it's personal or business, that you really are a big believer in?
It's going to get back to what we discussed at the beginning of this call. And I do our own numbers. I reconcile our own sales numbers to our own revenue for Bookkeep. And I try to have other people build me those reports. I end up building them myself. And when I feel like things are falling apart or not going the right way, which is usually every other week, and then I pull back, reconcile our sales, check, differences, how much churn, why the churn. And I do that at least once a week, if not a couple times a week. And that just brings me back to when I hear, hey, we're busy, we're selling, we're so busy, we have so many phone calls. And then I have those numbers every week to be like, yeah, but something's not right because the numbers aren't going up as much. So that is something I kind of got away from, because you get people who tell you shouldn't be doing that. You have a CFO, let them do that. No, you need to be doing that. I think even no matter what level you're at, or have some people you really trust and understand how they do that, so you can trust the numbers that they're looking at too. Because there's not even on purpose. It's just things get mangled when information is delivered to you as the owner or runner of the business. So I love doing that, and it brings me back to what's important at the business.
Great. Jason Richelson, serial entrepreneur. Bookkeep.com is your current venture. Thanks so much for joining the show today.
Thank you.
And guys, listen, I mean this seriously. Jason and I both mean this. If you've made it 30 minutes into this episode, thank you. We're grateful for your time, for your energy. Hope you grab a couple of nuggets that make you better this week. And until we see you next time, take care.